our one of our big conversations almost every meeting was how are we going to survive this? And that's what was keeping us awake at night. How are we going to get through this? How are we going to survive? And um, chasing after little ad hoc grant programs and things like that. There was no predictable funding from the province, and we knew we needed that support, and yeah, we had that concern about a shrinking tax base. So how do we continue to not just meet expectations of our ratepayers, but how do we provide those basic services that we're required to?
Welcome to the Cross Border Interviews, the show where we sit down with municipal political leaders from across Canada. Now, our mission on this show is quite simple: shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that we call home. And for today's episode, we travel to Bow Island, Alberta to sit down with Mayor Gordon Reynolds. Bow Island is a community waiting to be discovered. They truly embody the small town friendliness and hospitality that Southern Alberta is known for. It has also become a vibrant agricultural community with many agri-processing industries, such as Bow Island Dry Edible Bean Plant and Alberta Sunflower Seeds. From the smallest village to the largest city, across every region of the province, Alberta municipalities represents the communities where over 85% of Albertans live. AB Munis provides a united voice for 265 of Alberta's 330 municipalities, including summer villages, towns, cities, and specialized municipalities. As Alberta's largest municipal group, AB Munis listens to municipal leaders and advocates for solutions to their common issues. Additionally, AB Munis supports local governments by providing services specially designed to meet their operational needs. And they bring their members together regularly so they can share ideas and information so that their communities can thrive. Check out Alberta municipalities at abmunis.ca and follow them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, now called X. Mayor, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and talking about yourself and talking about the great community of Bow Island. But before we talk about the community, I want to get to know the man behind the persona of mayor, if you don't mind. And I've got to ask a open-ended question. Where did your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Gord?
Well, I just felt that wherever you live, I'm not originally from Bow Island. I came here 46 years ago fall, this coming fall, and I just felt that your community is really what you make of it, and your whole living situation is what you make of it, and felt that I wanted to be involved on some level. Wasn't sure how to do that or what to do. I was recruited to be a community member of the Municipal Planning Commission and did that for a few years. And then that was, had lots of interaction with council and knew many of the people that were on council and some were friends and customers of mine, and just felt it was be a good opportunity. Considered it at one point, and then moved out of town. We moved out to an acreage for a couple of years. And when I came back to town, not long after we returned to town, there was a by-election, and I was approached, and a friend of mine said, "Well, you don't have that excuse anymore. You're back in town." So I ran for a term, and that was in around 1989, 90, right when the Klein government cut off our funding, and yeah, things were a little tough and scary. So I did 3 years then, and then left for some family reasons, and then returned to council in I thought it was 2003, but I was doing some research yesterday. It was 2004 that I returned to council. I've been on council ever since.
Okay, so I knew that you had been on council in 2004. I did not know that you were in council prior to that. So I have so many more questions that I was planning to ask you than I originally was. Um, let's go back to that first time you were on council in the 80s, 90s. We often say municipalities are dealing with the same issues that they were dealing with 10, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
Do you find yourself still dealing with issues that you were talking about when you first got elected to council in that first by-election? Or have the issues changed that much that the municipality is now dealing with things that you weren't dealing with in the first term in office compared to what you are dealing with now?
I would say the basics are the same, and the big thing we were dealing with back then, or one of the biggest things was aging infrastructure and lack of funding to deal with that, and where do you start, sort of thing.
Wait, you're
But
telling me that the same conversations that we're having today about aging infrastructure was the conversation you were having around the council table in the first term of office?
that's that basic thing. The difference was it was so serious, and we were in a state of our commercial sector was shrinking. Yeah, young people were graduating high school and leaving, and with no intention of coming back. Population, like in many small communities, was starting to decline, and where we were afraid it would. Our One of our big conversations almost every meeting was how are we going to survive this? And that's what was keeping us awake at night. How are we going to get through this? How are we going to survive? And um, chasing after little ad hoc grant programs and things like that. There was no predictable funding from the province, and we knew we needed that support, and yeah, we had that concern about a shrinking tax base. So how do we continue to not just meet expectations of our ratepayers, but how do we provide those basic services that we're required to provide and still survive? So that was more where the conversation was then. Since then, when I returned to council in 2004, it was still much the same thing. One of the first things we did was an infrastructure master plan and identified where problem areas were. And then 2005, Mr. Stelmack came along and gave us the MSI program. And we could see a little bit of light then at the end of the tunnel. We had some funding, albeit with a lot of strings attached to it the first few years. Those gradually went away, or as his uh, Minister Daniluk told us, he was municipal affairs minister for a while. He said he was trying to turn those strings into rubber bands, so we had some flexibility. But that got us to where we could make a plan and say, yeah, we know we've got issues in these parts of town with our infrastructure, and here's our the sort of the order we want to get them done in, and we felt we could actually make a plan. The difference, and from my first term, was we didn't even know where to start. It was just
Yeah.
getting to be such a mess with old pipe and that sort of thing.
Do you feel like I'm trying to think of the original analogy here, but when you're in that moment in your first term and you're thinking the sky is falling because literally you're dealing with this aging infrastructure challenge that the municipality is going through. And then you look at today and it's even exacerbated even further because back in the 80s and 90s, you had a point, okay, the infrastructure is 10, 20, 25 years old. Now we're talking about infrastructure that's 60, 70, 80 years old. And if we don't solve the issue now, so when you're looking back on the first term and saying, okay, we're talking about we need to solve this issue. Now you really need to solve this issue, don't you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and Yeah, I look at that whole infrastructure situation in terms more from a small town perspective. When you think right back to when a lot of this stuff, certainly in our community, went into the ground in, the 40s and 50s, um, nobody knew what capital asset management was. We're going to put it in the ground and someday maybe it has to be replaced, but, we're not going to worry about that. We're
And then
under,
on that note, no one really kept maps of where everything was because I worked for a
oh,
municipality that people went, oh, well, just that pipe's in like ninth on John's house, so just go dig up John's house and we'll be able to fix it. It's like what? Wait, whoa.
yeah, yeah. A lot of that database is in the graveyard,
Yeah,
quite literally.
L-
And,
literally and
and
figuratively.
yeah, and it's we've come a long way from there, and we still have gaps in that. Interestingly enough, and our crew will be out working on something and find a valve they didn't know was there, it wasn't on the map, and and you hear that everywhere. But it's yeah, so we've come a long way from that, but so that wasn't the priority, and then when money was coming into municipalities through grants, sort of in the Lougheed era, that was going into community halls and arenas and all those nice to have things, and that stuff underground was kind of being ignored. I often think of a comment that a long-term experienced counselor from Anoka once said to me at convention, and he said, when's the last time you were at a ribbon cutting for a sewer pipe? So the sexy stuff was being looked after, and the other stuff was, yeah, well, we'll try and put that off. And so, we council over the years has had to shift its priority and make sure that those things were getting the attention first. And in the meantime, other things are sort of, getting pushed back, and we're striking a bit of a balance right now with our council, and we're doing a project, at least one water project a year, and sometimes two, and then with some new approaches, new materials, new processes, we're getting more done, and it's uh, at the same time, we're also updating, recreation infrastructure and those things that uh, uh, we used to think were nice to haves. It's nice to have an arena. It was nice to have a good hall. And we've all come to realize that those are must-haves if you want your community to survive and be a community. Those are things you must have if you want to attract people and especially families and help your community grow.
Just on that note, have the demands of the residents changed dramatically in the your tenure in office? Because you're right, the must-haves and the wants and the nice-to-haves are three different categories that residents believe in. If you go ask people in small town Alberta right now, what is the biggest thing that they wish they could have? They'll probably say an indoor pool that they can swim in. They'll probably want a nice arena. They'll probably want a nice road so they don't have to run over potholes. But municipalities like yourself and you as mayor and you when you're a counselor probably have come to the you came to the realization that you don't have a limited supply of money. So you can't just go buy all these must-haves and wants that people want. Have the needs and the wants of the residents changed that much that 25 years ago, 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago when you first were elected, you were thinking about these things, but now you have to have them because if you don't, you could be amalgamated, dissolved into a rural municipality.
Well, the other thing that's true. The other thing that's happened for us is, those young people I talked about that were leaving are coming back, and they want to raise their family there, and they're the ones saying, "Well, we need these things, for our families," and but they're also willing to step up and help us find that money, help us chase those grants, through say the Minor Hockey Association or whatever group is raising money. We have In Bow Island, we have one of our committees, one of our boards affiliated with council is our Recreation Advisory Board. And they've spun off and created a recreation society
Yeah.
that's raising money and is doing the casinos, whatever it is they can or need to do, putting on events and raising money that way. And that money is they're pitching that in to two projects. Our tourism committee also, which is mostly involved in promoting the town, also created a society and with separate people, and they're raising money. We have an annual children's festival, has their own sort of society status, and they're raising their money. They're not asking or demanding that the town put everything into it, and that is so helpful. And that's community. That's what community is about, and that's making a big difference for us.
Has the apathy changed in your time in office? Do people understand in Bow Island what the role of the municipality is compared to the province? Because when I first started covering municipal politics, this was back in the early 2000s, I would be willing to bet that I could tell people would tell me what the role that the province plays, the municipality plays, and the federal government plays in their day-to-day lives. Now, I'd say in the last 10 years that has dramatically changed. I hear from mayors and councillors that they're dealing with issues that are not in their jurisdictional purview. They're dealing with healthcare challenges now. They're dealing with education challenges because you're the closest to the people. You're the mayor, the councillor who's in your community 24/7. You don't go to Edmonton, you don't go to Ottawa, you're in your community. Do you get a sense that people understand today what the role is? And when they do approach you with provincial or federal issues, how do you tell them it's not in your purview because they've come to you for a reason?
Well, we make an effort to get that point across uh, constantly.
Is
Every
it working?
every serious issue. Yeah, I think so. I think they get it, and we've got people that are more in the community, in and around the community, more than happy to go right to the MLA and say, hey, you got to support these guys. Um, it's the one area that people I think get a little confused about is the healthcare. We've made efforts in the past to be very um, engaged on healthcare. We have a hospital here, a health center here in town, and back when AHS was created, there was all these rumors right away that part of the goal of the AHS was to close all the rural hospitals, and so I started a letter writing campaign. Went to the public and said, here's the health minister's address, here's the premier's address, write letters, and um, that and then we did also advocate for a modernization and expansion of our hospital, and we're successful in that. So when there's issues when there's issues with the hospital, wait times or whatever, I do tend to hear about that, but that's really out of our hands, and you just have to reassure people that. The other thing about our community that's changed a lot since I was first on council uh, was the our demographic. Unlike a lot of communities, we're at a point where we're not an aging community. We did a housing needs assessment a few years ago through the Rural Development Network, and found that 49% of our population was under the age of 25.
What? I thought you were
Yeah,
going to like say 45, not 25. That's
25.
huge.
So since I was first on council, we've had a large influx, I guess, of German Mennonites, Low German speaking Mennonites, that have returned to Canada or migrated to Canada from Mexico and a few other countries. And uh, large families, lots of kids, and that initial migration tended to just be for the summer season. They'd show up in spring for planting and they'd leave after harvest. And the majority of those folks are staying and they're property owners. And they probably represent, 40 to 50% of our population. Um, so not as engaged in government issues. Don't The vast majority don't vote. And they so not as engaged as we would like them to be on those issues, although more than willing to have conversations, and we do have conversations on the street corner or questions asked, and they're a big part of our growth, a huge part of our growth. We're we I mentioned earlier that housing has been an issue, and yeah, so we have a portion of our population that's not engaging in a political sense, but many of these folks have moved on from the farm labor jobs that they first came for. They're operating their own businesses.
Yeah.
We have a number of them are doing construction. They're building houses for us right now. We've got subdivision going on for higher density housing, and they're being really aggressive and helping that community grow. And I think appreciative of some of the things that we're doing in terms of recreation, and they're big users of our parks, and they're getting, we've built. We've upgraded and built three playgrounds in the last few years in different parts of town, and trying to have places for all these kids to play, and things for them to do, and that seems to be working well. We're looking at, on the recreation side, we're looking at an arena that was building that was put up in 1953 to store grain in one of those prairie programs, and we're still operating it. We put $1 million into an ice plant for it this last year that we can stand alone, that we can relocate to a new arena someday. So that's an example of a project, arena and combined with a pool that we're looking at for the future, and these younger people that are helping raise money for that realize that it's going to be could be a 20-year time frame to get that done, and so I think we're approaching things. And they're approaching things, helping us as a council approach things with more vision. Look at the future. We're building for tomorrow, and so we've got away from that trying to survive mode that we were in, 30 years ago, and moving on to laying the groundwork. And I'm really inspired by that and appreciate that, and I've always felt and was taught when I first got on council to look at that future. Every decision that we make, what is that going to pan out in the future? Because I look at things now. Often we get into, well, why the heck did council do this back then?
Well, I can answer that.
What was this decision based on? And of course, council minutes are pretty brief and vague at best. So so you got to have that in your mind all the time when how's this going to play out down the road, and not have that attitude of, well, this will be somebody else's problem.
But I got to challenge you on that, though, Gord, for a second, because you're right. The municipality is there to look towards the future, but you probably know best. People are struggling right now. The cost of living is through the roof. People are going paycheck to paycheck. People are finding even a $10 increase to property taxes potentially could cost them a trip to the grocery store every month. And I'm not trying to be like jokingly about it, but it's true. People are struggling. And there might be some who say, it's great that we're looking at the future, but we have to worry about the here and now as well. We got to worry about what's
Mhm.
going on in your community. And I know you know that the municipality has one major source of revenue, and that is property taxes. And that's where you make the biggest impact. And that's where you get that funding to do these projects, to do your infrastructure projects, your capitals, outside of grants and raising money. How do you balance the future of your community with the here and now as one vote on council? Because you need a majority of to pass anything that goes through council. So how do you make those tough decisions that could impact someone's life?
Well, our view on property tax has always been that's what we're going to operate on, and we're going to utilize provincial money for infrastructure upgrades, and then any grants will go into those things. You recall MSI when it first came out had the capital portion and the operating portion.
Yeah.
And what we did from day one is on the books that operating portion appeared to go into operations, but never did. That always went into reserves, and that went into capital. Because we believed, and our mayor at the time when that came along was a former MLA who'd been through the Klein cuts and took all that crap and abuse from people. Uh, we knew that would change, that would go away. You can't operate on those grants, and unfortunately, a lot of small communities were forced to operate on those grants, and as that operating grant disappeared, they became unviable. And we didn't want to be in that position. So we've always had that mindset that you can't operate on the grants, but you can certainly build on those grants, and then to have people in the community that are willing to step up and fundraise. We've been blessed for I think we've had 10 over the years, 10 big fundraising initiatives spearheaded by a group that all goes back to hockey. A local boy, went on and played in the NHL and won a couple of Stanley Cups, named Troy Loney. Played for Pittsburgh and later Anaheim. And
I'm an Anaheim Duck, so you mentioned Anaheim. I'm gonna have to mention the S. Who doesn't love Anaheim Ducks? So there's my little plug there.
well, Troy was the first captain of the Ducks in the
Yes, he
expansion.
was.
Yeah, he went over there. Anyway, so they the two Stanley Cup wins. He gets to bring the cup home for an event, and some forward-thinking friends of his turned those into fundraising events. A golf tournament and a supper, and come and see the Stanley Cup and silent auction. And then that just built over the years. And then it got to, well, are we going to keep doing this? And then they started doing these events in memory of somebody from the community that put a lot into the community, and or somebody special in the community. And the second last big one was in memory of a young boy that was killed in a farm accident. And the goal was to raise money for a memorial splash park, and they came up with $500,000 and built an absolutely amazing splash park. Um, Followed the next year in memory of two people that had been part of that committee and had helped with that fundraising effort, and it were community people, and that uh, uh, created enough money for a large playground. Again, some of that infrastructure money, but people stepped up big time, and that's keeping the community going, and that's not just people from town, because the other thing I always I talk about community a lot, and the town boundary is only important, is mostly important to our CAO and our staff as to where do we send the bills, and where does the grader stop working and all of that. But the people that support our businesses, the people that are part of our community community boards and functions that attend our schools. A lot of them live out in the county, but they identify as being from Bow Island, just as the people in the south part of the county identify with the village of Foremost and wherever. But
Is that the Cypress County that you're talking about, or is that are you
county of 40
40 mile?
mile. We're
You're
in the
40
county of
mile
40
county.
mile.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure about that because I know it's like you're right on the edge or near the edge. Yeah,
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
right beside them.
I want to turn because I'm cautious of time. I just realized we will be talking for a half hour when I haven't even got to the part about talking about municipality, which we a little bit. But I want to preface this next line of questions with the following. This is a conversation between the mayor and myself. This is not a motion of council, not a direction of council, not a policy of council. This is his opinion and his opinion alone. It may line up with what's going on at council, but at the end of the day, again, he has one vote and he needs a majority of votes to get anything passed, to make it a motion, to make it a policy. With that
Right.
being said, Mayor Reynolds, as of recording this episode at the end of February 2025, what do you believe is the biggest challenge facing Bow Island today?
Well, I would the overarching one is and will be for a number of years that aging infrastructure and finding the resources to we couldn't possibly get it all done in 1 year. There's that much that has to be replaced. But the more immediate one that we've been dealing with for several years, and that's still in play for sure, is housing. Lack of housing and not even just affordable housing. It's also we've had a very tight market and a zero vacancy rate for rentals for a long time. And yet every business here for a number of years has had help wanted signs trying to expand. Housing's been the problem. And so we did that housing needs assessment a few years ago and then tapped into the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund and we put that to work and with a goal of creating for that fund 51 new living spaces within 4 years. So that's 2027 to have that all done. And we might hit 60 this coming year. The building has been the property sales. We were using that money for incentives. We updated the land use bylaw to look at some higher density options, and we finally, I think, even have a developer on board. Traditionally, small towns, the town has to be the developer. We have and we've developed the property, but we've got somebody that wants to do a fairly large project and manage the rental, sale, whatever people want and need. So, and it's a variety of housing styles, and that's really encouraging. But we still have to get those built, and like as I said, that we could hit that goal this year, uh, uh, potentially by this fall. Um,
If
so
they all build, though, if they all build, because if you just put the infrastructure in the ground to these properties and the housing doesn't get built, you're not hitting the markets, are you?
we we had there's a single family house that started building this fall and they worked on it all winter. There's an eightplex going up right now. And I think as soon as the weather breaks here, we'll see the other guys start up as well. Because the properties are sold. Like we majority of this new subdivision has been sold. So It's
Is that enough though? Is the 57 or 61 now, is that enough to alleviate some of the pressures that your community is facing with the housing market? Or is there a number? And I hate to put a quantitative number on this interview, but I've got to ask, is there a number that you're looking at? You'd say, okay, if we can get, well, we have 60 now, if we get 120 by 2027 instead of that 50, we'd be laughing, and we'd be able to bring in those workers, bring in those businesses, bring in those lower income rentals, that people are able to stay here and work and live and raise their family here.
yeah, I think by 27, if we could hit 100, we'd be in just fantastic shape. And this isn't just for businesses either. This
Yeah.
is uh, plays into recruitment for healthcare professionals, teachers, RCMP.
Yeah.
We went through a period here where the RCMP officers were commuting from Medicine Hat. That's a 40-minute, 30 to 40-minute drive. And members that have bid into positions here recently would rather live here than commute, but there's no place for them to rent. And there are younger members that aren't quite ready to buy a house yet, but they'd rent and live here if they could. It's those public services jobs that are being impacted, and uh, we're looking at expansion of continuing care uh, 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 in this town as well. So, and that requires workers, and so yeah, I think that would help that continue that growth and help sustain that growth.
One of the big challenges with growth, though, comes because there's three parts of the equation around building more houses. You need developers, you need the municipal infrastructure in place, but you also need the resident buy-in to understand that growth is good for your community. Because people move to Bow Island, people move to your community because they like that small town atmosphere. They love that friendliness. They walk down Main Street and they know that person walking out of the grocery store. They know that person walking out of the
Mhm,
hospital. Do you get a
mhm.
sense that while you are trying to grow and expand for the future, your community is behind you and understands that if we don't grow, we could see that loss of that healthcare center, that loss of that RCMP detachment, that loss of that community continuing care facility? Do you get a sense that people want to see the community of Bow Island to grow as well? Knowing that there's going to be, you're never going to get 100% of the people behind you at any issue,
I
knowing
was just
that.
going to
But
say that.
would you
Yeah.
say the majority support you?
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely true,
Yeah.
and there it's never going to be 100%. There's going to be naysayers and people that aren't looking at that big picture, and this is my little corner of the world, and that's all I'm concerned about. And what's going to change? It's yeah, you always have that. As our population demographic changed with newcomers coming in. Well, gee, what does this mean for me? This just isn't the town I used to. But these folks have moved in and they're wonderful property owners. They take pride in their property. They look after their property, and they've really enhanced our community. And people have come to realize that. So it's yeah, you're never going to get 100% buy-in. The other big issue for us that we're staring at here and hoping that we're going to get some clarity within the next several months is the location of our highway. So we're on Highway 3 in Southern Alberta, and the town has long been proponents of twinning that highway to make it safer. In the 70s, it was a narrow strip of Saskatchewan pavement, certainly between Tabor and Medicine Hat, no shoulders and really dangerous. And they upgraded it then, and basically told us, well, you're good now, so don't worry about it. But it's become extremely busy and a tremendous amount of traffic. It's a major commerce route. And right across, and we've seen what positive things have happened when they twin between Tabor and Lethbridge, and it's twinned all the way to Fort Macleod. And then, the traffic issues, especially on long weekends in the Crow's Nest Pass, are legendary, and that's Highway 3. So we have a commitment from the government to twin all the rest of the highway, and they're working on Tabor to Burdett right now, which is just west of us, and that's 46 kilometers. That it will be fully complete in 2026. And they're doing engineering right now from Medicine Hat out to Seven Persons, which is 23 kilometers, I think. And so then there's the Bow Island section. So the functional plan calls for a pretty distant bypass of our community. And so we're pushing back on that. And uh,
If that bypass does go through, what would that mean to your viability of your community?
have a huge impact on a good portion of our businesses. Um, a lot of
Because
them
you're
are,
quite a big agri-processing community, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
well, yeah. So in terms of agricultural processing and the agricultural business, not a big impact, but it's uh, the restaurants, the gas bars, um, the tire shop, the motels,
Yeah.
to be 4 or 5 kilometers away from the highway is going to be tough, and uh,
Did
we're
they
not
give
a
you a reason why they would want to try to put the bypass where they want to put the bypass, or is it just an engineer report saying that the bypass would be beneficial here compared to being near?
well in
Um,
2011 the engineer was tasked with laying the groundwork for a freeway.
yeah,
And the province has said, no, we're not going to build a freeway, but are going to twin. But this will still be the groundwork for a someday freeway. And we all get that. We understand that. And if we are going to have a freeway across the south at some point, then we don't want that going through the middle of our town. There's very few freeways in the province of Alberta. There's the Deerfoot Trail, there's the Stony Trail, there's Anthony Henday, and that's about it. Even the number two is not truly a freeway. The number one is not a freeway. Um, so a freeway has very limited access. Your
wow.
access points are at overpasses and interchanges, and this plan does not call for any of that at this point. And I understand that someday that will probably happen, but that is going to be, I think, a long time in the future. For now, the province would like to get this done, and part of that, a big part of that, is expanding the agri-food corridor across the south, all the way to Medicine Hat, and so we need better transportation corridor for sure. And I understand the trucking industry, would rather go around all these towns for the most part. But they're not going around Tabor at this point. They're not going around Coaldale. The long-term plan calls for bypassing Lethbridge with this highway eventually, once it is a freeway. But so we're not ready for that kind of a transition, but we don't want to be the fly in the ointment that blocks it. We support the whole twinning initiative for the economic benefit or safety, number one, and the economic benefit of the province. But we don't believe that any one community should uh, be negatively impacted by such a thing. So talking about alternatives and but the cheapest and quickest is the other point, is to keep it where it is and just widen it through town and so that's up in the air. The department hasn't hired an engineer yet to work on that plan, revisit that plan. Um, I don't believe they will will do the bypass. And the reason the bypass is that far away is when they did it in 2011, the guy basically drew a straight line across because the highway does make some turns. He just drew a straight line across and it ended up being like 4.3 kilometers south of the current highway. So we want them to at least be able to see the darn water tower,
um,
which
I one la
which incidentally is a bean pot, as
that's
we are the bean capital
which we're going to talk about in 2 seconds. But before I do that, I have one quick question. Then I want to turn to some tourist destinations, if you don't mind. Now, we talked about the challenges, and I will guarantee you that many municipalities are going, yep, we have the exact same issues. We have the housing challenges, we have the aging infrastructure challenges. But there's things that Bow Island does well that they should be proud of. What's the one thing that you look at your community and say, we have our challenges, but we have this going for us? What's that X factor that is so important to Bow Island?
Well, I think I've already talked about it. And it's that generation that's come up and is putting not just their money but their effort where their mouth is. They're not just demanding things. They're poking and prodding, but they understand the issues and they understand that it's pretty simple math. If you want all this done right away, then your taxes are going to go up, and they're woo, hang on to that. And yeah, I think that's been what where we've evolved to is we're getting that kind of buy-in, and if we can expand that buy-in into that the larger community, I think we'll be fine.
Awesome. So before we turn to tourism, I do admit that I forgot that I have a new segment on this show, and it's only for Alberta municipal leaders. And as you are an Alberta municipal leader, I have to ask you this question. We have a very big, important date coming up in October of 2025, and that is municipal election season.
Mhm.
Have you decided if you're running for re-election?
Not completely. You know, was last year, I think it was. Yeah, well, over a year ago, I became Blue Island's longest serving mayor. That was never my goal, and I never wanted to be the old guy on council, uh, but I am, and I really try hard to not sit in the corner and say, well, we used to do this and we used to do that, or
Back in my day, we used to
back in
do it
my
this
day.
way.
I try really hard to avoid that. But also, when you get to that point, as my predecessor was, you're kind of have that history of why those projects were done that way. Why did this happen? And that's valuable. But it takes time, it takes energy, and you still have to have that passion. And I have there's still stuff to be done, and it's yeah.
Do you
So
still get
haven't
up
made
every
the
day feeling the same passion that you did when you first got elected to council in that by-election?
most days. Most days. Yeah. There's been times. There's been times, but currently, what makes the job really satisfying and easy is the people that are working for the town. And we have a team right now that has just been amazing and truly a team. And yeah, the drama is pretty minimal, and you always have, when you've got people, you've always got drama, but yeah, these folks are doing just an amazing job, and you know so when I get these compliments from people about snow removal or whatever's going on, I just like, well, thank you, but I'll pass that on because they're the ones that are doing the work, and that's a big difference that I forgot about from my previous time on council. Back in the day, we had like, 4 or 5 guys that worked for the town and uh, weren't paid really well. And so councilors almost by default ended up getting involved in operations, which we had no business doing, but it was stressful. And I learned how to clean out sewers in my first term on council. And we had a councilor that supervised road projects, and you all whatever committee you were on, you were expected to almost expected to turn out and do those things. And then I think one day somebody finally read the MGA and realized we shouldn't be doing all that. Because when I returned to council, it was a different structure, and this is our lane, and we're going to do our best to stay in that lane, um, and try and avoid the micromanaging and so my interaction is with the CAO, and I pass any encounter I have with any of our staff is just supportive. I don't direct anybody, and my council all understands that's how they're to behave, and I think there's too many people in our roles that don't understand that, and that's why we're seeing such a turnover in CAOs and staff, and yeah, let them do their job, give them the tools they need, uh, whether it's training, whether it's equipment, whatever, and do a good try and do a good job of hiring right in the first place, and then give them the tools they need and let them do their work. And boy, it's paying off for us big time, big time.
If there's one piece of advice that I would recommend any potential new counselors about to run for council, listen to what the mayor just said, because that is the biggest hurdle that a lot of newly elected municipal leaders have to overcome is understanding the roles and responsibility of council and the CAO.
Yeah.
So that's my
Yeah,
one piece of go
and
ahead.
when you're elected, especially if you're brand new, don't poo-poo the idea of taking training, and that Council 101 is huge, and I think an eye opener for a lot of people, and then listen to the old farts and learn to stay in your lane, and
So
you'll be happier, and your community will benefit from it.
I am cautious of time, and I have one last question I have to ask before my $1 million question. As I said prior to the recording of this interview, I'm going to be coming to Bow Island later on this spring because I've made a pledge to visit every single Alberta municipality in 2025. So I'm coming to Bow Island and I'm coming to visit and I'm coming to potentially meet you so we can grab a tea, a coffee, and sit down and continue this conversation. But what are the tourist spots? What are the things that people need to get off the highway and stop and see in Bow Island?
Well, um, the first thing that we recognize in terms of tourism is, we're not Banff, we're not we're we're not.
But aren't you though? Because every municipality has a draw that they
What?
need to promote.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And there's things to do here. We have a terrific golf course. We've got a campground that we've expanded and we're continuing to upgrade. It's busy all summer long, and it's fairly close to the golf course. So, you can come we have people that'll stay for a month and drive their golf carts across to the golf course. There's that. In the county of 40 Mile, just south of Bow Island, is the 40 Mile Park. There's a irrigation reservoir there operated by the St. Mary's River Irrigation District, and at the east end or west end of that is a park that was created a long time ago and has evolved to quite a little community, summer community, and it's bringing people to the area, and they come into Bow Island to shop and go to the restaurants and that sort of thing. So that's one of our draws. We have pretty interesting agriculture around here. There's can be up to in the county of 40 Mile, there can be up to 40 different crops grown in any given year, and some things that you're not used to seeing and not used to smelling. I'm involved in an operation where we grow spearmint and peppermint and dill, and extract the oil from that. sugar beets, potatoes.
Your town must just smell amazing 24/7 if it smells like peppermint, spearmint, and dill, because I just want to come and just take a big whiff of your community now.
Yeah, at harvest time when we start cutting that material, yeah, it's pretty nice. It's yeah, pretty cool. So there's if you have that interest in egg production, there's that sort of ambiance, I guess, in the countryside. Some cool little businesses, and we're hoping to see as the town continues to grow. I think we'll see businesses sort of return to our downtown core, and possibly some more things that happen along the highway. If you're traveling through and you're thinking about maybe I would like to or need to build a new house somewhere, we have four businesses that do ready to move structures, custom built homes all the way down to they've got the plans sort of thing, and they build them on their site and truck them to your place and locate them. We have a business here that does modular construction. A lot of it's been going to BC for a long time. They've done a care center in Red Deer and I think one in Lethbridge, six-story apartment building in Victoria, BC, all built here, trucked to the coast, put on barge over to Victoria. They ship to California, Washington, Colorado. Very sort of state of the art, just amazing structures that they're building. And then we have companies that are doing commercial ready to moves as well as houses. So as I said earlier, we've got lots of builders here, and just that whole process is interesting. But yeah, there's a lot going on here. It's a busy place, and
I,
of course, if it, you can't miss them when you drive by, is Pinto McBean right there on the highway.
You literally are about to take my question out of my mouth. How the heck does the community of Bow Island come up with Pinto the Bean as their official mascot welcomer?
Well, back in the 80s, there started to be across the prairies in a lot of towns, as you well know. You've got the pierogi stuck on a fork, and the giant goose, and there's the Easter egg, and there's the moose over in Moose Jaw, and so we've had a bean processing plant, a dry bean processing plant in Bow Island since the 60s, and that business has grown and is part of owned by a multinational company now, and a major employer and a major part of the local economy. And so, well, you need a mascot. So the tourism committee back in the day came up with Pinto McBean, and he's pretty well known. And I mean, you search Bow Island, one of the first things that comes up is Pinto McBean. And then he got an update in 2012 for Centennial. And some people were traveling through, and they saw Pinto McBean. Well, isn't that cute? And they happened to have a friend whose last name was McBean. And so they sent him pictures. Well, Mr. McBean, John McBean, I believe his name was, pardon me, Pinto was his last name. Pinto was his last name, is his last name. Mr. Pinto was an animator for Disney down in Orlando, Florida. And so he took the images that he was sent and he sort of did an updated version of him that's been adopted and added to our promotional stuff. And, you know, and we give him credit for that to John Pinto, not John McBean, John Pinto. And yeah, and the current version of our tourism committee is really pushing hard to get him out there. We have a small statue of Pinto that we take to events, or we've got one that's about 3.5 feet tall. We take him to trade shows and things like that, and yeah, it's we're doing our best to capitalize on that because that's what we're known for. You can stop and take pictures and have selfies done at Pinto McBean. And someone mentioned the other night, like we just put up a stand to put your camera on, so you can do your own selfie. And we can see tracks in the snow even this time of year. People stopping to get their picture done with Pinto. So it's um, yeah, so it's a lot of
I,
fun. It's pretty
I'm
cool.
looking forward to meeting Pinto McBean.
Oh, absolutely.
I love the fact that Alberta has so much history with Walt Disney. We have Bertie McBeaver from Alberta Wildfire, who was created by Walt Disney.
That's right. Yeah.
We have now Pinto McBean, created by a Walt Disney employee. Walt Disney, come set up a shop or come set up an amusement park in Alberta because it seems like you guys want to come here. Before I let you go, I have one final question, and it's the $1 million one. You've already talked about it a little bit, but encapsulated into a paragraph, into an elevator pitch. What makes Bow Island such a unique place to live, work, and raise a family?
Um, I've always looked at it in terms of my background in agriculture and what it's done for this community. Agriculture is our lifeblood, but we're blessed to have diversified our economy and with the housing business, we have a little bit of oil and gas spin-off industry here, um, and um, we started out being the town that lights the West, with the discovery of a large gas field north of Bow Island in 1909, and an entrepreneur named Eugene Costa, who'd been doing gas plays all across Canada, started out in Ontario, came here, found this gas field, and in 2000 and 1912, he and some investors created a company called the Canadian Western Natural Gas Company, which is now ATCO Gas. They built a pipeline over to Lethbridge in like 80 days, 80 some days, 86 days to get gas across to Lethbridge. It hooked into a pipeline that took gas to Calgary. We were the town that lights the West for many years. Irrigation arrived here in the 50s, and we became the place where water works wonders. And then, 89, 90, we became the bean capital. So entrepreneurs, our climate supports our agriculture. Uh, this whole southeast region is the most annual hours of sunshine in Canada. We have lots of heat units and then we've got water. We've got the irrigation system, an amazing irrigation system, and then you combine that with entrepreneurial producers, and then the entrepreneurs that come along to support those producers with the ancillary businesses. That's yeah, that's what keeps this town going, and will continue to. So,
Mayor Reynolds, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sitting down and doing this interview. It's always a pleasure to sit down and speak with municipal leaders across Alberta. It seems like Bow Island is well served with you on the council and you with your knowledge and your understanding of what municipalities are going through. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence on the show today.
well, thanks for inviting me, Chris. I've really enjoyed this, and I watched some of your other interviews, and thought, yeah, I can talk to this guy.
Perfection. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Cross Border Interviews. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights from Mayor Reynolds. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube, and follow us on social media at Cross Border Network. For even more content and learn about the stories and people we feature on this show, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back with a brand new episode of Cross Border Interviews next week. Till then.